Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Michaela Kerrison, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Captain Michelle de Friskbaum. We are honoured to acknowledge Mr. John Chandler, First Assistant Secretary Submarines, Naval Shipbuilding and Sustainment Group, Department of Defence, and the accompanying delegation. We also warmly welcome Group Captain Mac Cottrell, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services Leagues of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of the Glennie School visiting from Toowoomba, Queensland. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If you are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Evan Frederick Shannon. Evan Shannon was born in Rockhampton, Queensland on the 25th of November 1922, the son of Cyril and Violet Blanche Shannon. He grew up amid a large family in Emerald, a rural town in the Central Highlands region of Queensland. Later, he attended the Church of England Grammar School in East Brisbane as a boarder, and from that he went on to work as a station manager. Evan Shannon enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 21st of May 1943 at the age of 20. After initial training, he embarked at Sydney on the 11th of August 1943, bound for active overseas service. Arriving in Canada later that month, he trained as a wireless operator and air gunner, first at Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then Mossbank in the province of Saskatchewan. On the 16th of June 1944, he left Canada, bound for England. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners, and flight engineers who joined British and Commonwealth squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. In early September 1944, Shannon joined No. 27 Operational Training Unit based at RAF Lichfield in the countryside of Staffordshire. This unit trained night bomber crews using Avro Lancaster as part of No. 6 Group RAF Bomber Command. On the 20th of February 1945, Shannon transferred to No. 103 Squadron RAF, a night bomber unit based at Elsham Wolds in Lincolnshire. After a few months with his new unit, on the night of the 4th of April 1945, he was the rear gunner in one of the 5 Lancaster bombers detailed to lay mines in enemy waters in the Aarhus Bay, Denmark. Nothing further was heard from the aircraft after it departed. It did not return to base. While homeward bound from the Danish coast, members of another crew saw 3 aircraft shot down behind them, but were unable to identify the individual aircraft. 2 of the aircraft appeared to crash into the sea and 1 onto the land. Shannon's sister wrote to RAF Records asking for news of her brother, racked with confusion and anguish at not knowing his fate. I asked one of my sisters, who's a drug addict, she wrote, but went into the details at the time. Says he's in Callan Park Mental Hospital, Parramatta, Sydney. She says he's an old man in a wheelchair and suffering from shell shock. I rang Callan Park and there is a Shannon there with the Christian name of Samuel in Ward 18, but it doesn't seem to be Evan. I don't know whether to believe her or not. It wasn't until 1949 that it was reported that all efforts to find any trace of the aircraft had been unsuccessful, and the crew had been recorded as missing, lost at sea. The crew members aboard the aircraft were Flight Sergeant Charles Hodge, Flying Officer Lincoln Hull, Flight Sergeant Sydney Jeffrey, Sergeant Edmund Kelly, Flight Sergeant Stanley Pearce, Flying Officer Vivian Valentine, and Flight Sergeant Evan Shannon, who was 22 years old. With no known grave but the sea, today he is commemorated at the Runnymede Memorial. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Evan Frederick Shannon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.